Hi everyone! By the end of this video you should be able to calculate the surface area of cylinders and cones. We're going to start with the cylinder and I'm going to go through some step-by-step instructions. Step 1, I want you to always draw the net of the shape that you are trying to find the surface area of. So you can always go to this visual, interactive, or you can just kind of visualize what's going on here, but if you unroll a cylinder, you're going to have two circular bases and then the lateral face is really just a long rectangle. So the net is going to look something like this. Make sure you draw that on your paper. Two circle bases, the radius is 7 on both, and the height of the cylinder is 10. So that height is how tall it is, which that makes it this side of the rectangle. And once you draw the net, you want to find all the necessary dimensions to actually calculate the surface area. So I'm just going to redraw that net. And I know most of the dimensions here, so I knew that this was 10 and the radius was 7. But in order to calculate the area of the rectangle, you also need to know what this side is. To figure out how to find the length of that, I'm going to go back to that interactive. So I'm looking for how long this side of the rectangle is. And if I curl that back up to form the cylinder, that length is starting to wrap around the circle. So see, that length is like curling around here. And if I keep going, that length is going to have to wrap all the way around the circle. And keep going, keep going, keep going. That side wraps fully around the circle and forms the side of the rectangle, but it wraps all the way around the circle. Okay, so if I unfold it, like this would have been wrapped all the way around here. This means the length of this side of the rectangle is always the distance around the circle, because this whole length will wrap around this whole circle. And the length around the circle, remember, is called the circumference. And circumference is 2 times pi times the radius. Okay, or that's the same thing as pi times diameter. Because remember, the diameter is just 2 radiuses put together. So with that said, since this side, again, wraps all the way around the circle, the length of this side is just the circumference of the circle. So the length of the side is 2 times pi times r, which in this picture, our r is 7. So it's 2 times pi times 7. Or it's pi times diameter. So if the radius is 7, the diameter is 14. And 2 times 7 is 14. So no matter how you do it, you're going to get that the length of the side is the circumference, which is 14 pi. Now that we have all the necessary dimensions, we can start by calculating the lateral surface area. So the lateral surface area is just the surface area of the faces that are not the base. In this case, that would be the rectangle. So we know the height of my rectangle is 10, and the length is just the circumference since it's wrapping around the circle, which is 14 pi. In order to calculate the area of that, it's base times height. I can even write that down. Area equals base times height. So base is 14 pi, height is 10, which is 140 pi, if I want an exact answer. If I want an approximate, you can plug into your calculator 140 times 3.14, or better yet, use the pi key, which is approximately 439.6. Don't forget your units. In this case, it was centimeters. Since I'm talking about area, it's centimeters squared. Okay, now to find the total surface area, if you're asked for it, of course, all you have to do is include the bases. So the total surface area is everything that covers this shape, not just the faces. So the only thing I haven't calculated now is what's the area of that circle. So there were those two circles here. Each of them had a radius of 7. So the area of one circle is pi r squared, which is just pi times 7 squared, which is 49 pi. Okay, but in order to calculate the total surface area, I actually had 2 of those circles. So this is 49 pi and this is 49 pi. So the total surface area would be 49 pi plus 49 pi plus whatever the lateral surface area is, which I'll say is 140 pi. Okay, and these are all like terms, so you can combine them. I have 49 pi's, I had 49 more pi's, I had 140 pi's, I get 238 pi's, which you can again get approximate answer by multiplying that by pi. And it's really 700, or approximately 747.32 centimeters squared. Okay, so the total just has to be a combination of the lateral surface area and the bases. And this would be your exact answer, and this would be your approximate. Next shape I want to talk about is the cone. Okay, so step one, just like a cylinder, you're going to go ahead and draw the cone in its flat form. So if you need to take a visual, here's a cone. That bottom is a circle, and then the top kind of, this has to wrap around the circle, so it's rounded, but it's coming to a point. So this is going to be sharp edges there. And it looks something like this. I'm going to draw the best picture I can. It doesn't have to be beautiful, but it looks something like that. Now we know that the radius is 8 feet. And the height, if you go from the apex to the ground, like straight through the cone, is 15. But in terms of like what this distance is on the surface, so the surface would be over here, I don't know what that is. And if you don't know the height on the surface, you won't be able to calculate the surface area. So that's where I may need to do some calculations to find necessary dimensions. Now, if you take a look at this picture here, if I have the height go straight down through the cone, it makes a 90-degree angle, and then the radius is perpendicular to the ground. So I actually form this like right triangle slice right out of the cone. And I'm going to redraw that. So I have this right triangle. This is the height of the cone is 15. This is the radius, which we said was 8. And I need to find what's called the slant height. The slant height is the slanted height on the cone. It's the height that's on the surface. Okay, so there's a height that, you'd measure how tall it is, but this is the height on the surface. So it's called the slant height because it's slanted. Okay, so in order to find surface area, I have to find the slant height because that's what's on the surface. In order to do that, I have a right triangle. I can apply Pythagorean theorem. So we'll call this A, B, and C. 15 squared plus 8 squared equals C squared. Go ahead and calculate C. Okay, so 15 squared plus 8 squared is 289. Take the square root of both sides so you can get C alone because the square root undoes a square. And you get C is 17. So now I have all the necessary dimensions to calculate the surface area. So to calculate the area of the circle, I will need the radius, which is 8. To calculate the area of this lateral face, I'm going to need the slant height because it's on the surface, and that's 17. Okay, so that's something new for this video. Now to calculate the lateral surface area, you do need a new formula. Okay, so this is the one formula you do have to know that's new for surface area. And the formula for the lateral surface area of a cone is pi times your radius times s, which s is the slant height. Okay. So multiply pi times the radius times the slant height, you will get the lateral surface area. So our radius in this case was 8, and our slant height was 17. And if you multiply those out, that's the lateral surface area. So 8 times 17 gives you 136, times pi is my exact answer. If I want my decimal form, I'll multiply by pi, or 3.14. Now, since I'm using 3.14, I rounded. This is an approximate answer. So it's 427.04. And again, I want to include my units, and this one was feet instead of centimeters. So feet squared. Now, total surface area, again, is the area of everything. So the lateral surface area plus the area of the base. Okay, the base of a cone is a circle. In this case, the circle's radius 8. So to calculate the area of that, area of a circle is pi r squared. Plug in my r, and I get pi times 8 squared, which is 64 pi. Now, the total surface area, I'll take my base, which is 64 pi, and I'll add my lateral surface area, which I said was 136 pi. Okay, and if I want to get my exact, I will just add those up. They're like terms. So I have 64 pi's, and I add 136 pi's. So I will have 200 pi's. That's exact. If I want, I can multiply 200 times pi to get my approximate, which is approximately 628. If you use the pi key, you might get some decimal places. Since I just rounded to 3.14, I did not. And that is feet squared, again, for the total surface area. Okay, so both of these are good answers. One's exact, one's approximate. Okay, so the one new formula you do need to know is that the lateral surface area is pi times radius times your slant height. You can go on my website and figure out where that comes from. I'm not going to derive it in this video for the sake of time. Okay, but otherwise, now you should be able to calculate the area or the surface area of a cylinder and a cone.